Nice to have you with me here on The Doctor Is In.
You have always been a voice of reason through all of this.
Appreciate your time, what you're doing for America.
I give you advice, and it doesn't work at all.
You are definitely not inept by any means.
I like to hear women say that about me.
Whatever advice you're going to send my way, I am 100% taking it.
I can't tell you what to do. I will not tell you what to do.
Okay. Well, thanks.
That wasn't the answer I wanted.
Are you kidding me?
Great stuff, Dr. Ray. I'm glad I called.
I've scheduled my day around listening to your radio show.
You don't have to laugh so hard.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Doing my own stunt voices and discipline. No discipline doubles here. Avoiding all known forms of psychobabble. Lowest percentage of psychobabble of any program on the radio. 2.7%. Some might say, why not 0? Well, because it's too hard. The measuring is, the AI measuring is not sensitive enough. For example, if I say, I watched the movie Groundhog Day, and they had the song that kept repeating itself by Sonny and Cher. The AI hears Cher, and it thinks, well, that's psychobabble. I want to share where you're at. So you can't get down to 0. It's like the old ground clutter when they used to have the less sophisticated weather radar, and that's just ground clutter. We don't see that anymore. Did you notice that? Okay, good to have you here on The Doctor Is In. Look back Friday. This is where we take previous calls from Greg, Juliet, Jennifer, and an anonymous female on topics that they first called in about and that I realized there's more to say. There's always more to say, obviously. This is not therapy. If this were therapy, there would be a lot to say. But just adding something to the call that might make it a little more clear, a little more instructive, maybe define a term, go off in a direction that I didn't go off in on the call because I wanted to stay with what the caller was aiming at, but I was tempted to go in a different direction because I sensed something else was happening. So that's what we used Look Back Friday for. This came from, where's this from? Let me see where this is. It's a commentary from, where's it at? Baltimore. It's in the Baltimore Sun newspaper, the Baltimore Sun. And it's interesting. The whole theme of this thing is something that I've talked about in previous programs on this program. And I think he's trying to give a balanced approach. My sense is it's overly cautious, balanced approach, but you see what you think as I kind of skim through this. He starts out, or she starts out, I don't know who the author was. Public conversation about family estrangement has intensified following comments by Oprah Winfrey discussing the growing number of adult children who distance themselves from their parents. Critics have accused her of promoting what some call a modern cutoff culture. Supporters argue that she's just simply giving voice to people who feel wounded by their families. Okay. Now, the previous article that I reviewed was very much, this is a good thing that so many people are cutting off their parents because they're finally recognizing the kind of pathology they were raised with, and we're much more sensitive now to all the ways that parents can mess up kids. That was the tone of that article. Now, I know many of you listening are thinking, no, we didn't mess up our kids. We raised them as best we could with love in a faith-filled environment, and they turned from it. Maybe I was pathological and I didn't realize it. Maybe I was dysfunctional and it wasn't apparent. That's what some of the tone is in these articles. He qualifies. She qualifies. But the truth is more complicated than the debate suggests. Now, I got a sense of where this person is going to go with this. Let's see if he does. She does. family estrangement is not a phenomenon limited to abusive or dysfunctional homes. Yes, okay, that's good. That's very true. And this is kind of interesting, an interesting qualification. He says, she says, it happens in families that from the outside, there's a little qualification there, appear loving, stable, and responsible. Author goes on without the qualification. It happens in homes where parents worked long hours, sacrificed financially, and sincerely tried to raise their children with values, faith, and discipline. Okay, good for this author. Finally, somebody saying, yeah, not every time a parent gets cut off by a young adult or even older adult offspring, it's not because they were bad parents. For many parents, the pain of estrangement is bewildering. They remember the sleepless nights, the school events, the financial struggles, the worry about providing a better life. They remember trying to guide their sons and daughters through a confusing world. When those same kids, I said kids, this author said children, later sever contact or distance themselves emotionally, parents often struggle to understand what went wrong. True. That's true. I'm with them right there. Now here's come the other side. Yet, from the perspective of many adult children, the story feels different. Some carry memories of feeling unheard, misunderstood, or dismissed. Others interpret strict parenting as emotional distance or control. In some cases, those feelings may reflect real wounds. I hate that word. It's overused. That deserve acknowledgement. In other cases, they may reflect generational misunderstandings about discipline, authority, and expectations. Okay, the point here that needs to be qualified is that, yes, I don't doubt that the majority, perhaps the vast majority of adults who sever contact with their parents feel that they were misunderstood, feel that they were over-disciplined, believe that they were dismissed. I don't doubt that. The question is, were they? It isn't automatic because a 23-year-old thinks that my mother was just not understanding that she was just not understanding. That's where I have a problem with this. As a psychologist, I see how easy it is to make ourselves miserable or hostile towards somebody by what we think and believe to be reality when it's not reality. I shall go on. Young people now grow up surrounded by powerful outside influences that shape how they interpret family relations. That's very true. That's very true. They are beleaguered by a tsunami of people telling them you're a victim, telling them your parents did it all wrong, telling them you have certain rights, telling them you need to set up boundaries. It's just enormous. Social media platforms. Thousands of communities discussing the trauma, the boundaries, the emotional well-being. Of course, social media makes victims out of so many people. And the irony is, this is what I see as a psychologist, it's much more likely when someone is a young adult or an adult screwing up their lives that they turn on the parents. Obviously, I'm unhappy and discontent and anxious and miserable because of the way I was raised, rather than maybe the way that I'm looking at things, maybe the way I'm doing things, maybe the way I've been influenced by so many forces other than my mom or dad. Social media carries risks. Online spaces often reward dramatic narratives and simplified conclusions. In those environments, complex family relationships can be reduced to a single label, toxic. Of course, in my book, How to Get Along with Almost Everybody, I had a chapter devoted to the language of severing contacts. parents are toxic. They were emotionally abusive. Of course, they're narcissists. When that happens, of course, when you label something toxic as in poisonous, well, what do? Well, that's pretty clear. You distance yourself. You protect yourself. You cut off anybody who causes you pain. Keeping in mind, who is causing you pain? Are you causing you the pain, or are they causing you the pain? My experience, especially dealing with a lot of folks in this kind of audience, is that the kids are causing their own pain, and they're projecting it onto the parents, saying, "You're doing this to me." I quote, "Although boundaries can be necessary in situations of real harm," and I talk about that in my book, How to Get Along with Almost Everybody. I say, yeah, there's times when you do have to. It's dangerous. It's extremely troublesome to somebody's well-being, and you do have to distance. But the author says the idea that severing family ties is the first step toward healing oversimplifies a deeply human problem. That's what I say to parents. I said, if you made a mistake, as I assess these parents, they come into my office by the droves, okay, wanting to handle a 35-year-old, a 32-year-old, sometimes a 44-year-old who has just kind of brushed them from their lives, thinking, what happened? And they seem like reasonable people. I can't be inside that house, and I didn't grow up in the house. So, yes, that's the big qualifier. But given how they assess things, how they talk, my sense is that their main problem, and apparently this author touches upon this, their main problem in raising their children, their main flaw was that they were human. And he says, families are messy. Parents make mistakes. Children misunderstand. Generations grow up with different cultural expectations about authority, independence. Yes. A father who believed that he was teaching discipline may be remembered by his child as distant. A mother who worried constantly about safety may be later viewed as controlling. See, that's part of the problem here. There's no tolerance. If I look back on my own parents and say, I don't like the way they did this, I don't like the way they did that, this hurt me, this bothered me, where is my tolerance? Where is my ability to say? One, maybe they didn't intend it. Or two, even if they did, where's my forgiveness? The author's stealing my thunder, saying they were imperfect human beings attempting to raise children in an imperfect world. We should be cautious about turning estrangement into a cultural trend. It's already a cultural trend. 1 in 4 are estranged from a family member. Or a moral badge. In other words, I am good and right and psychologically healthy by cutting you out of my life. I'm not saying that a parent can be very, very difficult throughout childhood and even into your own adulthood. I'm not saying that. It can be. But that severing of the relationship, especially for Christians, I can kind of see people doing that who aren't Christians. Their view is, hey, my happiness is paramount, and if my parent bugs me and bothers me and irritates me, hey, I'm better off without them. Now, my experience also is that religious or not, if you do that, you're also making a comment about yourself. Okay, I'll close it up here. This isn't his summary, but I'll leave it at that. What our culture needs is not more encouragement to abandon family relationships. It's true. Get a lot of shrinks doing that. They do that all the time in therapy. You need to set boundaries on your mother. She's toxic. Nor does our culture need blind loyalty that ignores genuine harm. What we need is moral clarity, balanced with humility. Family is rarely perfect. It is often frustrating, emotional, and difficult. The author closes with this, but it is one of the few places in life where forgiveness, patience, and love still have the power to rebuild what conflict once threatened to destroy. A lot of good thoughts there, Dr. Ray.
We'll return after these messages.
Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. Let me go straight to, let's see what we got here at that time. Better go with this short one. Anonymous female is calling from New York. Her parents are visiting, speaking of family estrangement, for the first time in a year.
So basically, I haven't seen my parents in a very long time. My husband and them and I had somewhat of a falling out due to a huge misunderstanding prior to our wedding. They didn't come to our wedding. We had a baby about 2 months ago, and they're coming to meet the baby in around 2 to 3 weeks. And my husband and I are just nervous about how it's going to go because they're coming to our house, and we haven't seen them in a very long time.
What's very long?
The last time I saw them in person was last year in the fall when my aunt died at her funeral.
Is this a relationship with your mom and dad that's always been kind of shaky for a long time?
It didn't always feel that way. It felt like we were close earlier on, but I think we did have some chinks in the armor, so to speak. I think there were attempts made to keep things closer than they otherwise would have when problems got exposed during this falling out. That kind of, I think, they were just swept under the rug.
Well, I like your insight, because most people say, oh, we were so close. We were just very, very close. And I think, well, if you were that close, why did they decide not to talk to you for a year? What could you have done so awful? So thank you. Thank you for seeing that.
Yeah.
It has to be a pretty big misunderstanding for them to say, I'm not going to come to my kid's wedding. Oh,
yeah.
You don't have
basically, I can summarize real quick. So, my at the time fiance and sister had a misunderstanding, and basically, I said that I didn't want my sister to be the maid of honor in my wedding.
Okay.
And yeah, but I apologized the next day after my mom said that wasn't a good idea. But then about a month later, they called me and said they don't support us getting married anymore, even though I'd apologized. We've had holidays together again. But looking back, I think that they didn't like your
fiance. They didn't like your fiance for what he did, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they just decided, as long as you marry that guy, we're not sure how much we want to have to do with you, which is a very interesting way to look at this. They're coming to your house because they want to see the grandkid. All right, grandkid's more important than putting up with your hubby, or maybe even putting up with you, Mom. So they want to see the grandkid. Focus on the grandkid. If they bring up the past, say, Mom, Dad, we both apologized about that. I hope you accept it and let it go. Well, we don't understand why you wouldn't just have her. That is your sister. And Mom, we just apologized. You want to hold a baby? Don't get into it with them. Don't do it. I would let them just focus on that little one, because they're going to be all proud for that little grandchild, especially if you're the first grandkid. Oh, man.
Yeah, I am the first.
All right, that's big. That's huge. And somehow they've decided, either one or both decided, it would be good for us, in fact, to try to mend the fences. I was going to split the analogy. Mend the bridges to see this kid. So I think that's what you're dealing with. You got to avoid them bringing back up the past. Say, Mom, let's let that one go. It's something we disagreed on. We apologized. Can we move forward so you can be part of this baby's life? That's what I would do.
I can do that.
All right, hon. Good luck to you. That is such a common Fisher. Not Fisher like person with a rod and reel, but Fisher like a split, Fissure, in relationships, which is, you didn't do it the way I wanted you to do it. Hubby, fiance at the time, had some kind of disagreement with the sister. Okay, I don't know where the fault lies with that one, and he probably wasn't very smart about this, because if you're going to marry into this family, you don't start out by clashing with your wife's sister. Nevertheless, it happened. So he influenced his fiancée to not ask the sister to be the maid of honor. Or she just simply decided on her own. I kind of missed that. Said, no, not asking you. Well, what happened is that even because she just thought that, she immediately changed. A day later, she said, I'm sorry, that was wrong. No, you thought it. Guilt by thought. So because of that, she acted in a way, however short-lived, that the parents didn't want her to act. They took it personal. How could you? That's your sister. Is this the way it's going to be? Is he going to have this kind of influence over you the rest of your marriage? I got to believe that was the thought floating around in all this. But it's so sad because so often that is the case. And I guess I'm speaking to those of you who want to have a fractured relationship, a strained relationship with a family member because they didn't do it the way you would have liked them to do it. But I think the way they should have done it is a much better way, a much nicer way, a much more charitable way. No argument there. No argument there. Nevertheless, it does come down to they didn't do it the way I wanted them to do it. How is it that that's such a part of fallen human nature? When I was in grad school, got a lot of theories. There was an awful lot of personality theories and developmental theories. One of those theories was birth trauma. In other words, going from a very different environment, dark, watery, pretty much safe, to this shocking experience of colors and sounds and brightness and breathing air, just this riotous kind of experience all at once. And there are those therapists who think, oh boy, well, that's a trauma. That's a major trauma, and it's going to bury down inside the person's head. Some of them called it the birth wound. Well, obviously, there's not a whole lot of research for this. There's a lot of theory on it, a lot of speculation on it, but it's really hard to measure something like that. How would you do this? There are too many genetic intervening experiences, all of that in shaping who a person is. So you can't just point back to the fact that, oh, you know, she's into drugs because of the birth wound when she just came out and just had to experience life as a one-day-old. Well, anyway, I initially didn't give much credence to birth trauma. But looking back on it, I think there's something to be said for it. For example, obviously, it affected me. When I was born, I apparently was so distressed, I didn't speak for close to a year and a half. Yeah, that's true. And I remember on my second birthday, I was very developmentally advanced. I remember thinking, I've just doubled my age in a year. if this continues, if this kind of mathematical progression continues, when I'm 7, I'll be 64. Do the math. Do the math. All right, now I'm looking at the clock here, and every single look back call up there would take me straight to the break without me being able to say a word, Andrew. So what should we do here? I know I did. I talked for 3 minutes, just trying to be entertaining, All right, let's do this. I have more to say about our anonymous caller who's nervous about her parents coming around for the first time in a year to see this little baby. In one of my books, I talk about time-limited contacts. For example, Christmas Eve, family members are getting together, and among those family members is a sister, brother, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, cousin, somebody that you just really have a tough time with. And you would much prefer that they wouldn't be in the same place that you would be in. You've had long history of just unpleasant interaction with this person. What are you going to do? How are you going to enjoy Christmas Eve? It's time limited. You can get along with pretty much almost anybody. Almost anybody. For a short period. But Dr. A, it doesn't seem like a short period. It is a short period. Okay, how long is Christmas Eve? 2 hours, 3 hours? Going to have the dinner, maybe open a few gifts, maybe sit on the other side of the room from them. You can do this. Or if you say, this person really just makes me ill at ease, makes me uncomfortable. You don't have to be uncomfortable. You can tell yourself, I would prefer that they weren't here, but they are here. They're part of the family. Or my mother says she wants her son here, and my brother and I have just not seen eye to eye in a long time. We pretty much just sort of live our own separate lives. But he's going to be there. He's going to be there at Mom's birthday party, her 85th. How long is the birthday party? You can be civil to anybody for a short period of time. You can. It's time limited. It's gonna end in an hour or 2 hours. How much conversation you need to have with them? Dr. Ray, you don't understand my brother. He provokes. He'll make snotty remarks about my politics or my religion or the fact that I homeschool. He'll throw jabs. Okay, so he throws jabs. So what? He's opinionated. He's inappropriate. He's not pleasant. But that doesn't have to affect you to the point where you say, I'm going to stay away from my mom's 85th birthday. He can say what he wants. All you have to worry about is if it's true. You can't stop him from throwing jabs. If you tell yourself that apparently this is how he makes himself feel superior, and anybody who has to make himself feel superior must at base feel inferior. Why would you have to do this? If you could get to the point where what people said didn't get to you, you would have a lot more peace with family members, with friends. Dr. Ray, I'm not going to put myself there to get abused. Well, it depends how you define abuse. Yeah, a person can be so downright hostile and nasty that there's no way to relate to them. I got that. But more often, these are people who are either opinionated or they brag or they throw jabs or they make snarky remarks. You don't have to let it get to you. If you have to be around them, this is a relative, this is a mom, this is a dad. This is a brother, a sister. This is a spouse. You don't have to give them that kind of power to make you feel bad. You don't. You control how bad you feel. You really do. People think it's automatic. Oh, if somebody says something that really hurts, if somebody says something's really snotty, you just got to feel bad. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're the one who decides how much it's going to get to you. In this business, you're going to get, as a host, and anybody on the radio or TV will tell you this, you're going to get snotty emails. Snarky, nasty, critical, unfair email. You're going to get them. You're going to get them. Okay. Is that going to stop you from hosting the show? Everybody I know that has any kind of profile on radio or TV will tell you, oh yeah. You get people to attack you for the weirdest things. And you have to develop a little bit of an elephant hide. Consider it, see if it's true, but if it seems to you in your best judgment to be just nasty and irrational and unfair and misinterpreting, then yeah, you don't have to let it get to you. If you did let it get to you, you'd quit. You'd quit. Because most people can't take being attacked. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In, Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. My website, drray.com. All 18 of the book titles are there. They are signed. And you get them at a pretty good price, too. You can see which ones might appeal to you. Also have an Instagram managed by my son and a Facebook page. I didn't really want to do that because in my mind, Instagram and Facebook were, oh, hey, look at me eating my bologna sandwich in the shape of a giraffe. Oh, here's the strawberry preserves I put on my bagel this morning. And that just stuck with me bad, but I was convinced that I could use it as a platform to help, to make comments, offer thoughts and ideas that perhaps some people might find useful. Though it's been some time now. And it's ironic, the biggest thing that we ever posted, by far, dwarfs everything else, no matter what I thought was helpful wisdom, couldn't come close to the views of a joke that I told at the beginning of one of my talks. Now, it's a complex joke, and it, in a beautiful way, comments on the truth of Christianity. We're not sure exactly the number of views, but it's somewhere between 10 and 15. Okay, not 10 and 15. Not 10 and 1,500. Not even 10 and 15,000. 10 and 15 million. That's, you know what that's like? That's like winning the lottery. A big lottery, and it ruins you for getting together with your buddies and playing nickel-dime poker and getting excited because you came home that night with $9 ahead. That's what that was. When you get one of those posts that goes 10, 12, 15 million, and then you get another one that goes 42,000, it's like, ruined me. Okay, enough of this persiflage. Let's see where we're going to go with this. This is Jennifer. No, wait a minute. I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the clock. I can't go with Jennifer. She's 6:13 minutes here. Let's go to Juliet with Georgia. Son with some bad grades. Is he getting bad grades?
Well, he's in 10th grade. And the main classes, I think, is biology and, of course, ELA, literature. Well, for 9th grade, he was in a Catholic school. So he got withdrawn, and now I have, unfortunately and sadly, had to put him in a public school just for now. And I told him, to do his best, especially in those two classes. The good thing about the public school is that they provide the assistance, the after school and all that. And I told him to take that advantage and the opportunity to do that. But I was giving him some little advice 2 days ago. And I told him, ask your teachers for help, and, they're there for you. I have emailed them, and they told me the same thing. And you know what he said? He was like, I know I can do that, but I'm lazy, Mom. And I'm like, oh. I was like, yeah, but don't be negative, because if you keep that in mind that you're lazy, like all the time, and you're not going to have that effort to do what you need to do.
Juliet, you have told him, you've tried to persuade him why it's important for him to put a little more effort into this, and he tells you, yeah, Mom, I hear you, but I'm not exactly the most motivated guy, and so you're asking me, is there some better way to get through to him? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and you know what? I started reading the book that you wrote, that Standing Strong, The Good Discipline Makes. I'm almost halfway there.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is stuff there on school performance. There's a question there on school performance. Look it up. Okay. It's right there. It'll tell you how to deal with these underachievers who have the ability. But let me offer you this.
And she's a pretty smart kid. It's just I'm a single mom, and it's been always him and me, and sometimes a little tough.
Let me make this real quick. I'll make it real quick. Does he have a smartphone?
Okay. No, but he has an iPod. That's all he has. He asked for a phone recently.
Does he need that iPod for school?
Well, he only uses it for music, and he doesn't have internet and anything like that.
Does he listen to music on it?
Yes.
You could say, son, see, here's I think where you're getting tripped up. You think that if you just were more clear, more reasonable, he would agree, and he would say, oh, now I got it, Mom. I see what you're saying. Of course, I'll put more effort into my work. Highly unlikely, Juliet. Not because I know your son, I'm just going by the numbers, that by and large, when kids don't perform up to their ability at school, all the reasoning in the world doesn't move them. You are going to have to use some leverage. You may have to say, son, your grades have to be at a certain level. Let's say, for example, you want proof of what grade he has in each class on a Friday. He writes down the grade, and he gets the teacher to sign it. And your condition is it's got to be B or A. You said he's got the ability, so therefore A or B. And it ain't that hard to get A's and B's anymore in school because it's a grade inflation. That means if he doesn't, comes home with a C or a D because he's not turning in the work, that for the next week, he doesn't have that iPod. And he doesn't have the...
I tried that one time.
One time. You hear what you just said there? One time. I tried that one time.
He exploded, and I had to talk to the priest, and...
Well, now you just added a big element, my dear. You added a huge element, which is I tried to discipline him. I tried to put conditions upon him, and he got so mad that I didn't know what to do. Yeah. On one hand, if he just gets mad, well, he just got mad. On the other hand, if he gets mad and he punches a hole in your wall, or he cusses you out, or he takes off, you got to decide what you're going to do about that. Because at this point, as long as he has the ability to say, you cannot hold me accountable, Mother, and if you try, I'll go crazy. If that's where it is, Juliet, then what I would say is you get yourself some good guidance on how to bring this young man under better control. It's a trap that we get into, and I think it's based upon we so much want it to be reality, which is when our kids are failing to live up to their potential, when they view things a certain way that are hurting them or are self-destructive or are drifting from the faith, we begin to search for ways to reach them. And we use a lot of words. We repeat ourselves day after day after day after day. We revisit the subject 20, 60, 30, 90, 100 times because we think that people are eminently reasonable, and that people includes kids sometimes. And if we just reason the right way, you heard Juliet, she was saying, well, I've told him you don't want to be a failure. And she's trying to draw upon her understanding of how he can achieve better at school. And he's, Mom, you know I'm lazy. Okay, so she takes that and she tries to reason that. But the reality is he's not budging. He's not budging. And the proof in that is how he reacted when she one time, remember she said one time, did something about it. He exploded. Which bespeaks of an attitude of, you can't do this to me. What are you doing? Who do you think you are? You can't do this. So I don't doubt that she's afraid to actually put some consequences on him because she's not sure what she'll do if he acts like that. If he comes home and that iPod is hidden somewhere that he can't get it, what will he do? Will he put a hole in the wall? Will he slam things around? Will he cuss? What will he do? And then what will she do in response? It's a scary situation, and that kind of scary reaction keeps parents from actually standing their ground much of the time. They'd rather just sort of kind of just try to ride it out until hopefully some way things improve or the child matures or he gets old enough to go live elsewhere somehow. That's a heck of a way to live. Oh my gosh, that's a heck of a way to live. So often in parenting, yes, we explain ourselves. We explain our rationale. We talk with the kids. We listen to the kids. We try to instruct as best we can with good words. That's great. But there comes a point, and it's usually sooner than later, where we have to make it happen. His grades are terrible. He's capable. Can Juliet set up a system to make it happen? Whether he thinks he's lazy or not, whether none of her reasoning has helped, what can she do to make it happen? Not to say it happen, to do it happen. That's the big thing. There's so much of parenting involves action, not words. And I'm not talking about jackbooted, kick the door down, I'm in charge, kid. No. Too much reasoning gets you nasty. You get frustrated. You argue. You yell. You do things you would never say to any other human being other than your child. You don't want to get to that point. You want to do something about it. So I told her if he doesn't have the grades he needs to have every Friday, the iPad's gone. And now she won't do that because she's really afraid. She's afraid of how he'll react. Is she going to call the police? Is she going to call juvenile court? What is she going to do? At some point, you got to make a tough decision because otherwise she's just going to live as a hostage in her own home. And she'll be helplessly watching him sabotage his school performance. And my guest tells me also his cooperation at home. I was reading between the lines. School performance is only one part of it. Is it too late? I don't know, but she's got to act like it's not too late. Dr. Ray.
You're listening to The Doctor. Come in, pull up a couch, let's talk. The Doctor is in.
We have a little bit more than a minute left. Not much more to say. I had a friend who was in Saddam. Well, he wasn't a friend. He's a guy I worked out with in passing at the Y. He was formerly in Saddam Hussein's army. And he was a conscript. They just kind of took these guys and threw him into the army. And he said he was in the desert, and they were kind of hiding in holes in the desert, and they surrendered to the Americans very quickly. And he knew an awful lot about desert warfare, and he was he was being used by the Marines to train. I talked with him a lot. His name was Raheem. I said, Raheem, you have the kind of defiant opposition, resistance, out of control type stuff that so many of our parents have with their teenagers? He said, absolutely not. He was from Iraq. He said, absolutely not. I said, teenagers at some level are teenagers. He goes, First of all, he says the family structure is very, very tight in Iraq. He said, but the other problem is if the child would do this, they would have to leave the house. I said, well, how old? He said, well, 15, 16, 17. If they absolutely refused to cooperate according to the parents' structure and expectations. I said, wow, in America we can't do that because we have laws. You have to be an adult. And he said, well, in Iraq, we have very little of the kind of defiance among teenagers that I've seen here. Very, very little. And he said a lot of it is because we simply will not allow it within the family. Now, some might view that as very harsh, but I'm certainly not recommending we do that here in the U.S., but is it interesting, isn't it, that not all cultures act the same way? This is Dr. A. Thank you for joining me here. Good Lord permit. I'll see you on Monday, or I'll listen to you on Monday. Walk with God. Don't be rebellious.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.